Nearly 90 years ago, in 1933, workers in the city of Harbin in northern China uncovered a massive fossilized skull. The men who found it understood its importance, but they decided to keep it hidden because, at the time, China was under Japanese occupation. One of them wrapped the skull carefully and concealed it inside an abandoned well, so it would not fall into enemy hands. Decades later, just before passing away in 2018, that same man revealed the location of the skull to his grandson. Chinese researchers have since determined that this skull is at least 146,000 years old. It belonged to an ancient human species previously unknown to science, now referred to as Dragon Man or Homo longi. The skull itself measures about 9 inches in length and more than 6 inches in width, making it much larger than that of modern humans. Its owner was a man who died around the age of 50, with a broad nose that likely allowed him to breathe more easily during intense physical activity. According to newly published studies, this individual had a powerful, muscular build, which would have been essential for surviving the harsh winters of northern China in prehistoric times. The researchers emphasize that the Harbin skull represents a fascinating blend of both ancient and modern traits. For example, it has large, square eye sockets, yet the overall shape of the skull is more delicate despite its size longer and lower than the rounded skulls of humans today. Using advanced computer software, the research team determined that this skull, along with several others discovered across China, forms an entirely new branch on the human family tree closer to modern humans than the Neanderthals. Not all scientists agree that the Harbin skull represents a brand new species. Professor Chris Stringer of London's Natural History Museum argues that it closely resembles another skull found in 1978, which was classified as Homo daliensis. Still, regardless of classification, many experts consider this one of the most important discoveries of the past 50 years. This vast temple complex and ceremonial center dates back to around 400 BCE. Located in northwestern Uzbekistan, the site was built by an ancient society known as the Khwarezmian dynasty, which ruled the region when it was still an oasis. The structures were arranged in a circular pattern around a central fortified building with 9 towers. Within the outer wall, measuring 285 feet across, there were numerous residential dwellings. Inside stood a smaller circular enclosure with a diameter of about 138 feet, which may once have served as the burial ground for leaders of the dynasty. Later additions included shrines and temples. The Khwarezmian dynasty was wealthy and prided itself on its mastery of architecture and engineering. Their elaborate irrigation systems allowed them to thrive in an arid region that otherwise could not sustain life. The buildings at this site differ from most Khwarezmian constructions, which were typically square or rectangular. Yet the reasons behind this unusual design choice remain unclear, leaving many mysteries unsolved. Excavations beginning in the 1950s uncovered a wealth of artifacts, including containers, jars, and plates carved with human faces, terracotta figurines of warriors, animals, and even mythical creatures. Around 200 BCE, the nomadic Apasiaka tribe destroyed the original temple complex. A fire later consumed the central shrine, erasing much of the early history of Kaikin Kala's first inhabitants. The settlement was rebuilt and remained in use until about 400 CE, after which it was abandoned once more. Today, the excavated portions of Kaikin Kala have suffered severe erosion from decades of exposure to the elements, as well as the removal of building materials by local residents. So far, our knowledge of this site is still limited, based only on what archaeologists have managed to uncover: a statue on Mars. Next comes something that may surprise many. Could Mars once have been home to followers of Buddhism? The Buddha on Mars is an idea that sounds both strange and captivating. When the Buddha was not busy founding a new religion, perhaps he was visiting extraterrestrial beings. A photograph taken by a Mars rover revealed what appears to be a statue of the Buddha etched into a crumbling cliffside, leaving viewers astonished. But is it truly a Buddha statue, or could it be the likeness of some mysterious alien deity? The image was first spotted by the community UFO Sightings Daily, pulled from the database of NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. Once enlarged, it revealed the clear outline of a reclining Buddha. The resemblance to statues found here on Earth is striking. The Buddha once spoke of enlightenment. Perhaps he projected his spirit to Mars and was immortalized in stone by alien hands. But if that were true, where is that civilization now, and why has not a single trace of it survived? NASA scientists, however, dismiss the theory, insisting that Buddha is nothing more than a natural rock formation, much like how people see dragons in clouds drifting across the sky. Still, here is something even more unexpected. Evidence suggests that Mars once experienced a cataclysmic disaster, an event that may have wiped out all life on the red planet. But before we get to that, let's first explain why sunsets on Mars glow blue instead of red. In the 13th or 14th century, a nobleman in eastern England used a silver intaglio seal to sign and authenticate documents. Recently, a metal detectorist in Norfolk discovered this very seal, though it was heavily fire damaged. The artifact contained a gemstone engraved with a Roman image, though experts believe its owner may never have realized that. The engraving shows a winged figure holding a spear, thought to represent the Roman god Mars. Its medieval owner may have mistaken it for a relic from the Mediterranean or the Crusader era rather than a product of Roman Britain. Helen Gieke, the Fine's liaison officer for Norfolk, told the BBC that the seal was mounted in a silver case, which was originally flat but is now warped and roughened by heat damage. She explained that such seals were primarily used to authenticate or endorse documents written by others. Because of the damage, interpreting the engraving is extremely difficult. Still, seals of this kind were typically owned by nobles or individuals of high status. Although the true identity of the seal's owner remains a mystery, what we can say with certainty is that he was likely a count, bishop, or prominent member of the medieval elite. This is only the fourth silver seal ever found in Norfolk, with just about 50 known worldwide. More remarkably, it is the only one that shows signs of fire damage. Geek speculates that it may have been damaged in an accident or possibly even a wildfire. Whatever the cause, the seal has clearly survived many events throughout its long history. The Taso civilization destroyed its own kingdom. This event took place around 2,500 years ago in what is now Spain. The capital city bore the same name as the civilization itself, Tartessos. First appearing in the 9th century BCE, Tartessos was a seaport described in ancient Greek texts as a legendary culture rich in resources and technology. They mastered shipbuilding and metallurgy, spreading their influence across southern Spain before suddenly vanishing without a trace. Tartessos is considered the first recorded civilization of the Western Mediterranean. But why and how did the Taso civilization burn itself to the ground? Excavations of the ancient capital between 2014 and 2018 revealed evidence of a massive fire that marked the end of this society. Some archaeologists believe the destruction may have followed a series of natural disasters, earthquakes, and tsunamis that devastated their coastal settlements. Whatever happened, the period of decline lasted no more than 50 years. All of their smaller towns were flattened, leaving only the capital standing. The exact cause remains unknown. But archaeological evidence suggests that the kingdom of Tartessos deliberately set its own city ablaze after a great feast, which included dozens of ritual animal sacrifices, horses, cattle, and dogs all gathered and slaughtered before the flames consumed everything. It seems they understood the end was near and chose to go out in one final blaze of grandeur. From that moment onward, the Tartessos civilization disappeared forever. In the year 2012, while excavating an ancient public latrine at the Palace of Fontainebleau on the outskirts of Paris, archaeologists were astonished to discover a golden hairpin buried in layers of centuries-old waste. The object, about 9 centimeters long, was crafted in gold and decorated with 2 interlocking C's in green and white enamel, a design and color scheme long associated with one of France's most famous 16th century queens, Catherine de' Medici, who was renowned across Europe for her unmatched collection of extravagant jewelry. Catherine served as Queen of France from the year 1547 until 1559. Surviving pieces of her jewelry are extraordinarily rare today, which makes this discovery especially significant. What baffled researchers was the setting. How could such a royal treasure end up in a humble public latrine, a place where a queen would never have set foot? Several theories have been proposed. Perhaps the piece was stolen and accidentally dropped, or deliberately discarded to conceal evidence of theft. Still, archaeologists admit that they can only speculate. The true journey of this hairpin, from the royal palace to the bottom of a forgotten pit, remains an unsolved mystery. From the 13th to the 17th century, a prosperous city known as Tela stood in the far north of what is now Kruger National Park in South Africa. In the 1990s, archaeologists began excavating nearly 9 hectares of the site, uncovering stone walls built in circular formations on a hilltop. Anthropologist Lynn Meskel recorded in a 2007 study that Tela's society was sharply divided. Nobles lived atop the hill, while common residents occupied the slopes below. Around 1,000 people lived in the upper area, and nearly 2,000 more spread out across the lowlands. The name Tela was assigned by modern researchers. No one knows what the city was actually called by its ancient inhabitants. In the year 1983, a game ranger stumbled upon the ruins, but it was only after the fall of apartheid that large-scale excavations truly began. Artifacts reveal that Tela maintained an extensive trade network reaching far beyond Africa. Archaeologists uncovered shards of porcelain, glass beads, and imported goods from as far away as China, clear evidence of connections to North Africa, the Middle East, and even Asia. Among the excavated burials was a man and woman interred with golden necklaces, stone bracelets, and other precious ornaments, suggesting they may have been royalty. The people of Tela also produced intricate objects from copper, iron, and bronze, many resembling items found at Mapungubwe in northern South Africa and Great Zimbabwe in modern-day Zimbabwe. No one knows why the city was abandoned in the 17th century. A research report suggests that Portuguese influence and civil wars may have contributed to its decline, while the gradual drying of the land was likely another warning sign of the end of this once flourishing civilization. Mars is often called the Red Planet, but its sunsets tell a very different story. As the sun dips below the horizon, the planet's thin atmosphere glows a radiant blue, a striking contrast against the rusty red dust blanketing the Martian surface. Mars gives us pale turquoise sunsets unlike anything visible on Earth. The phenomenon is similar in principle to the way sunlight creates red, yellow, and orange skies on Earth. Sunlight contains a spectrum of wavelengths that the human eye perceives as colors. As light passes through the atmosphere, it scatters against particles and dust, producing brilliant sunsets. On Mars, however, the atmosphere works differently. Sunlight scatters in a way that floods the sky with certain wavelengths. Atmospheric pressure on Mars is only about 1% that of Earth, and its composition is entirely different, lacking nitrogen and oxygen. To experience something similar on Earth, you would have to ascend 18 miles above the ground, more than 3 times the height of Mount Everest. And only robotic explorers such as Perseverance, Curiosity, Spirit, Opportunity, Zhurong, and Insight have ever witnessed those breathtaking blue sunsets firsthand. About 40 miles north of Bangkok, in central Thailand, lies the site of Ayutthaya, once the capital of Siam and among the richest cities in the world. The city was founded in the year 1351 by King Yuthong, who fled there to escape a smallpox epidemic. Strategically located on an island surrounded by 3 rivers flowing to the sea, Ayutthaya flourished from the 14th to the 18th century, becoming a global hub of diplomacy and trade. At its height, Ayutthaya boasted gilded temples, jewel-encrusted palaces, roads, canals, moats, and an advanced water management system. By the year 1600, its population had reached an estimated 300,000, and by the 18th century, it may have exceeded 1 million. The city's glory ended in the year 1767, when Burmese forces invaded, plundered, and set fire to Ayutthaya, causing the Kingdom of Siam to collapse and forcing its people to flee. Much of the city's wooden architecture was consumed by flames. Today, only about 50 stone monuments and temples survive the devastation. Now recognized as a UNESCO World Heritage Site, Ayutthaya's towering prangs and grand monasteries still stand as vivid reminders of the city's former magnificence. Now comes the most crucial part, the great Martian catastrophe I promised earlier. Just as the biblical flood is said to have swept away ancient civilizations on Earth, Mars too appears to have suffered a cataclysm. Data from orbiters and rovers strongly suggests the answer is yes. An event of staggering violence wiped out all life on the Red Planet. It was an extinction-level event on par with the age of the dinosaurs, though its exact cause remains uncertain. Some blame massive volcanic eruptions, others a colossal asteroid impact. Either way, the catastrophe obliterated Mars's atmosphere. Remember how, just decades ago, humanity was alarmed by holes in the ozone layer? The Martian disaster was magnitudes worse, making our ozone crisis look like tiny scratches on the Great Wall of China. Thanks to robotic explorers, scientists now know that about 4 billion years ago, Mars once possessed an oxygen-rich atmosphere. Evidence shows its soil was saturated with water. Vast oceans once stretched across the planet, while Earth was still a fiery, half-formed world. Every clue indicates that life once thrived there. But time was not on its side. Life may never have advanced beyond simple forms. Our solar system is only about 4.5 billion years old, giving Mars just 500 million years of stability before disaster struck. Even under the best conditions, Martian life may have been limited to primitive ocean dwellers like ancient marine organisms or cephalopods. To evolve dinosaurs and mammals as Earth did would have required hundreds of millions more years, at least by modern scientific reckoning. Still, evolution on other worlds could have unfolded at a very different pace. Regardless, the disaster came. The Curiosity rover detected traces of argon gas, confirming that Mars's original atmosphere had been stripped away like mist blown off by a violent wind. Dr. Christopher Webster of NASA suggested that the cause may have been a collision. I don't think we can call it a meteor strike because it was too large. The correct term is a collision with a wandering asteroid. He explained that the impactor was comparable in size to the dwarf planet Pluto. The explosion must have been unimaginably powerful, perhaps even felt here on Earth. If life once existed on Mars, it was annihilated in mere seconds. This was the most violent era in the history of the solar system. During the first 700 million years of the Sun, both Earth and Mars endured constant bombardment from gigantic space debris. The solar system resembled a colossal pinball machine, with asteroids and wandering planetoids smashing relentlessly. Venus, Mercury, and even our own moon bore the same scars. Scientists call this period the Late Heavy Bombardment. The ancient Sumerian city-state of Ur is famous for being mentioned in the Bible as the place Abraham departed before traveling to the land of Canaan. Yet few realize that Ur truly existed as a prosperous and influential trade center long before it was ever written into scripture. Founded around 3,800 years before the Common Era, or perhaps even earlier in what is now Iraq, this once mighty port city on the Persian Gulf reached a peak population of nearly 80,000 people. Ur remained continuously inhabited until about 450 years before the Common Era, when climate change and overuse of the land's resources drove its people northward toward more fertile regions. The ruins of Ur were rediscovered in 1625, when an Italian explorer passing through the area found bricks and artifacts inscribed with strange markings. At that time, the ancient city lay buried under layers of sand. In 1922, British archaeologist Sir Leonard Woolley began excavations at Ur, uncovering ruins largely reduced to heaps of rubble. The most prominent surviving structure was a partially restored ziggurat, excavated during the 1930s. Originally constructed in the 21st century before the Common Era, it was rebuilt in the 6th century before the Common Era by Nabonidus, the last king of Babylon. Over time, the shoreline shifted, and today Ur's remains lie far inland, whereas in its prime, the city stood close to the sea and the mouth of the Euphrates River. Although the ruins shed light on ancient Sumerian culture, our knowledge is still limited, based solely on the artifacts and structures left behind, leaving Ur a mystery not yet fully solved. In May of this year, archaeologists reported the discovery of 17 decapitated bodies at 3 Roman cemeteries in Cambridgeshire, England, an unusually high number. The headless remains, dating back about 1,700 years, were found among 52 graves at Nobbs Farm. The victims included 9 men and 8 women, all over the age of 25 at the time of their deaths. A recently published study describes how some of them were executed while kneeling. In many cases, their severed heads were placed between their legs, and the empty spaces where their skulls should have been were filled with pottery. Some were even buried face down. The excavation team believes these individuals were executed for breaking Roman law during the 3rd and 4th centuries. At that time, capital offenses multiplied and punishments became increasingly severe. Evidence suggests the area may have functioned as a supply hub, where offenders were punished swiftly and decisively. According to the study, the number of capital crimes rose from 14 to 60 between the early 3rd century and the death of Emperor Constantine in 337 after the Common Era. The same period also saw widespread civil wars as rival leaders vied for power, while barbarian invasions grew more frequent. Despite their executions, some of the individuals were buried with valuable grave goods, indicating a level of respect. Families were even required to reclaim their bodies. Lead archaeologist Isabel Lisboa argued that they may not have been slaves, since slaves were rarely given proper burials. Not all experts agree. Professor Simon Cleary of the University of Birmingham noted that if stricter Roman laws truly explained the rise in beheadings, such cemeteries should be common across the empire. Yet, decapitated graves are found primarily in Britain, suggesting the practice may have served as a local deterrent in a distant province where imperial law was difficult to enforce. During recent excavations beneath the historic Haydarpaşa railway station in Istanbul, archaeologists uncovered the remains of a mysterious structure believed to date back to the 3rd century before the Common Era. Located beneath the station's pedestrian courtyards in the ancient city of Chalcedon, once known as the Land of the Blind, the structure appears to be a semicircular sanctuary, a distinctive feature of ancient temples. Experts believe the more than 2,500-year-old building is the oldest yet discovered on the site and was regarded as sacred by those who built and used it. In addition to this structure, archaeologists also unearthed artifacts from the 6th century before the Common Era, including jars, coins, and other buildings such as a storage hall and what may have been a small summer palace. Excavations began in 2018 after the station closed for renovation. These discoveries now provide an unprecedented glimpse into the ancient civilizations that once thrived in Anatolia and Istanbul. The mighty kingdom of Kush was one of the most mysterious ancient civilizations in the world. Situated in what is now Sudan, directly south of Egypt, the land of Kush flourished for millennia. We now know that Kush ruled this region from about 2,500 years before the Common Era until around 300 years after the Common Era, a span of nearly 3,000 years. The kingdom was vast and powerful, even constructing more pyramids than the Egyptians themselves. Yet history has all but forgotten them. Details remain obscure, But according to religious tradition, the kingdom of Kush may trace its name to Kush, spelled with a C, the grandson of Noah in the Bible. The scriptures record Noah's descendants spreading across northeastern Africa, and the similarity between the biblical name and the historical kingdom is striking. The Kushites interacted extensively with Egypt through trade, warfare, and cultural exchange. Around 1500 years before the Common Era, Egypt's powerful pharaohs marched south, conquering Kush's capital at Kerma and erecting their own forts and temples. Egyptian rule lasted until the 11th century before the Common Era, when Kushite kings rose to power and reclaimed their territory. Conflict persisted until climate change brought drought and famine, coinciding with the rise of the Aksumite kingdom farther south. By the 4th century after the Common Era, Kush had lost its power entirely. In the year 1909, astronomers peering through their telescopes claimed to witness an apocalypse unfolding on Mars. The story became international news. An article in the New York Times that year described a catastrophic event devastating the red planet. The reason for their conclusion was the observation of a strange yellow haze spreading across Mars, resembling clouds of poisonous mustard gas. American astronomer Pharaoh Akhenaten also reported the phenomenon, believing he saw canals built by an intelligent species. Half the scientific community was convinced that volcanic activity was destroying Martian civilization in real time. People gathered on balconies, looking through telescopes and imagining they were witnessing the collapse of another world. Today, that theory has long since been dismissed, though Pharaoh Akhenaten remains recognized as one of the founders of modern astronomy. Yet the true cause of the mysterious yellow cloud that shrouded Mars more than a century ago is still an unsolved riddle. In the year 2016, while monitoring the thaw of permafrost on the Gaidan Peninsula in Siberia, a team of scientists unexpectedly discovered a fragment of a medieval bronze cup originating from the land that is now Iran. Speaking to the Siberian Times, researcher Andrei Gusev explained that Persian artifacts had previously been found in western Siberia, but never this far north, well beyond the Arctic Circle. Alongside the cup fragment, the team also uncovered a ceramic vessel and the bronze handle of a knife. They believe the cup was crafted in the 10th or 11th century and brought to Siberia about 2 centuries later. Found more than 3,700 kilometers from its place of origin, the artifact stands as vivid proof of the vast trade networks that once existed in a world without modern technology. By the 6th and 7th centuries, Asian merchants had already reached the Upper Kama region of what is now Russia. The local Khanty and Mansi peoples placed great value on imported Persian goods, treating them as sacred, storing them in temples, and offering them to the gods. During festivals, they even used Persian bowls and plates to present food to their deities. With the thawing of the permafrost, it is entirely possible that many similar artifacts will gradually emerge, a rare but remarkable side effect of global climate change. Hay Alil in Yemen is a land without rivers or lakes, where the only water comes from seasonal valleys known as wats, streams that appear and vanish with the seasons. Over time, communities built towns and villages high on rocky cliffs to make the most of this precious resource. One such village, Hay al-Jazil, sits in the heart of Wadi Hadramaut, perched atop a massive rock, rising 328 feet above a barren valley below. Yet visitors are warned not to stand too close to the edge. This remarkable village has existed for at least 5,000 years, its narrow streets lined with houses built of mud brick. Though primitive in appearance, these mud brick structures are surprisingly adaptable, keeping interiors cool during the searing heat. Today, only 17 people remain, 10 of them belonging to a single family, and the village has no school, hospital, or store. Out of 45 houses, only about 30% are still habitable, the rest severely damaged by heavy rains, erosion, and neglect. Hay al-Jazil is extremely isolated. The treacherous road leading there can be traveled only by off-road vehicles, and the nearest hospital lies an hour's drive away. Visitors must leave their cars at the base of the mountain and walk up a cobbled path. One resident noted that life in the village has improved over time, with electricity supplied daily from 6 in the evening until 5 in the morning and access to clean water. He hopes that if the roads are repaired and widened, more people will return to live in this extraordinary settlement. A groundbreaking archaeological discovery has unexpectedly connected ancient Chinese civilization with a modern-day video game. A clay figurine thousands of years old was found bearing a striking resemblance to the green pig from Angry Birds. Could the creators of Angry Birds have drawn inspiration from ancient China? No one knows, but the coincidence is difficult to ignore. Archaeologists uncovered the figurine near the site of Sanxingdui, one of China's most mysterious archaeological locations. They noted that pig-shaped clay figures were common during the Shang dynasty, from 1600 to 1046 years before the Common Era. Since pigs were domesticated livestock, small figurines were often made to represent them, and the likeness to the Angry Birds pig may simply be coincidence. Yet, the strangeness does not stop with these whimsical statues. Not far from the village lies the Sanxingdui site, where some of the world's most unusual treasures have been unearthed. Among them are giant bronze heads with faces resembling extraterrestrials, some of which can be seen today at the Hong Kong Palace Museum. At a glance, they might be mistaken for Aztec art with their Mesoamerican appearance, but they are, in fact, entirely Chinese. Dating back about 3,000 years, the masks were likely created by the Shu Kingdom, a realm once thought to be mythical, until Sanxingdui was accidentally discovered by a farmer in the 1920s. Science has since confirmed that the Shu Kingdom was real, ruling the Chengdu Plain from roughly 4,800 to 2,800 years ago. The oddities continue. Archaeologists have also found small figurines resembling the lizard-like Ubaid statues of Iraq, though with features even more alien than reptilian. The Sanxingdui artifacts predate the famous terracotta army of Emperor Qin Shi Huang by at least 1,000 years. To this day, no one knows what the statues represent, or why the Shu Kingdom created such enormous and unusual masks. The culture vanished around 800 years before the Common Era, leaving Sanxingdui as a ghost city in a forgotten land. Excavations at the site of Kalkreis in Germany recently revealed a fully intact suit of Roman armor, once belonging to a soldier of the empire. According to the museum director, it is the oldest and most complete Roman armor ever discovered, making this find both tragic and extraordinary. The armor almost certainly belonged to a soldier killed in the infamous Battle of the Teutoburg Forest. That clash was less a battle than a massacre, when 3 Roman legions marching through the woods were ambushed by Germanic warriors. It remains one of Rome's greatest military disasters. 15,000 soldiers slaughtered in a matter of days. Emerging from the dense forest, the Germanic tribes annihilated the Roman force, a fate that some would argue was well-deserved. But the mystery lies not in the battle itself, but in the fate of this particular soldier. His remains were found alongside his armor, shackled by a device that bound his wrists to an iron board. This suggests he may have survived the battle, only to be sacrificed in a brutal ritual by the Germanic tribes. His armor was left intact because it had been tainted by the sacrifice, a relic of blood and ritual too sacred to reuse. On the outskirts of Monroe, Louisiana, lies an archaeological site dating back nearly 5,400 years. Here stand 11 massive earthen mounds connected by elevated ridges. They are considered among the oldest earthworks of the Archaic period in the United States, predating both the Egyptian pyramids and Stonehenge. This mysterious site was built by a society of hunter-gatherers known as the Evans culture. They began living here around 3,500 years before the Common Era, and over centuries, constructed such an enormous complex that archaeologists at first refused to believe it was possible. According to archaeologist Diana Greenlee of the University of Louisiana, no one imagined that primitive foragers could be so organized or capable of creating such complex works. These people lived by hunting, fishing, and harvesting wild resources, yet they also raised monumental mounds, some towering more than 25 feet high. The Evans culture spent nearly 7 centuries completing their mounds, making it one of the longest construction projects in human history. And yet, the true purpose of these mounds remains unknown. Archaeologists have uncovered hidden artifacts, stone beads, bone tools, fish hooks, and deer antlers used to sharpen stone blades, but no explanation for why a society would dedicate 700 years to piling earth into such massive forms. The site of San Miguel Ixtapan dates back more than 3,000 years, distinguished by megalithic-style stone architecture of astonishing precision. The slabs found here are not the largest in size, yet their craftsmanship is so refined that it seems impossible a pre-Columbian culture could have achieved it. The sharp angles and clean lines appear as if cut by modern machinery. San Miguel Ixtapan is one of the few excavated archaeological sites in the southwestern region of Mexico. Until recently, almost nothing was known about this area, other than its role as a corridor linking the Central Highlands with the Michoacan culture. The city flourished between 750 and 900 years after the Common Era, before being mysteriously abandoned around the year 1200. Yet, many structures here date back thousands of years earlier. Intriguingly, archaeologists discovered that numerous finely carved slabs had been incorporated into the walls of a colonial-era church in the modern town of San Miguel. It is clear the Spanish dismantled the ancient ruins, repurposing the stones for new construction. Their surfaces, finished so flawlessly they seem almost laser-cut, hint at the existence of a once advanced civilization, though the identity of its builders remains entirely unknown. Scientists believe they may have uncovered evidence of an entirely new human species. In truth, the discovery first occurred nearly 90 years ago, and the person who found it was not a scientist at all, but a Chinese construction worker. While digging, he unearthed a human fossil, dating back 146,000 years, a nearly intact skull. For almost 90 years, no one knew exactly which species had once possessed it. The mystery endured in silence. When the skull was discovered in 1933, the area was under Japanese occupation. The worker found it while building a bridge, and fearing it might be a priceless cultural relic, he secretly took it home. There, he hid it deep at the bottom of his family's well, keeping the secret almost to his death. Only in his final years did he reveal the truth, allowing his family to retrieve the skull and hand it over to scientists. Analyzed with modern forensic technology, the skull was determined to belong to a human species previously unknown. According to the Chinese Academy of Sciences, it is one of the most complete human skulls ever found. The being who once carried this ancient head has been nicknamed Dragon Man, in part because it is among the largest skulls of any human species known. Scientists believe it may represent a sister group to Homo sapiens, very similar to modern humans, but bearing more primitive traits. In Guanajuato, Mexico, lies Cañada de la Virgen, meaning Valley of the Virgin, an ancient city first excavated in 2002 and opened to the public in 2011. This city is tied to the Otomi people, an often overlooked civilization that thrived for thousands of years in the San Miguel de Allende Valley. They built Cañada de la Virgen shortly after the decline of Teotihuacan, the powerful central Mexican civilization. Archaeologists note that Teotihuacan's abandonment around 750 years after the Common Era coincided with the founding of Cañada de la Virgen. Many scholars believe the Otomi fled the turmoil of the Valley of Mexico and resettled farther north. Here, they constructed monuments aligned with the moon, the sun, and Venus, including massive pyramids designed to track solstices and celestial events. But like Teotihuacan, the Otomi civilization eventually collapsed. After about 4 centuries of prosperity, by the year 1050, the city had vanished without a trace. The true reason remains a mystery. Castel del Monte, or Castle on the Mountain, is a 13th century fortress located in Apulia, southeastern Italy, perched on a hill near the city of Andria. Built in the 1240s under Holy Roman Emperor Frederick II, it is famed for its mysterious geometry. What makes Castel del Monte extraordinary is its emphasis on the number 8 and the octagonal form. The castle's unique design features an octagonal plan with an octagonal tower at each corner, believed to encode symbolic or esoteric meaning. Unusually, the castle lacks a strategic position, defensive moat, or drawbridge. It was never intended as a fortress. So, why did the emperor build it? Inside are 2 floors, each with 8 rooms, encircling an octagonal courtyard. Scholars have identified astronomical symbols and details that may conceal deeper secrets. Centuries ago, the castle was hidden within dense forest, invisible to outsiders. Legends tell of men murdered, servants and prisoners perishing within the walls, their souls unable to move on. Some even claim that Frederick II himself still haunts the castle he so loved. Officially, it was considered a hunting lodge, yet rumors suggest it had a far greater spiritual significance. It may have been built upon the site of a Benedictine monastery, which could have influenced its design. The octagon, closest in form to the circle, symbolized harmony between earth and the divine. Perhaps the castle was built as a temple to God rather than a retreat for hunts. Some theorists claim Frederick II secretly met with the Knights Templar here, but because he died soon after its completion, the true purpose remains a mystery. Over the centuries, Castel del Monte has had many lives. It became a national prison in the late 13th century, a refuge during plagues, and later fell into ruin by the 19th century, when its marble and decorations were looted for other projects. During the Second World War, the United States military used the castle as a covert navigation outpost during the Allied occupation of Italy. Castel del Monte has witnessed countless episodes of history. Today, its image adorns the Italian 1-cent euro coin, and the site is recognized as a UNESCO World Heritage Monument. In the history of the United States, there once existed a cult so bizarre that its members tried to create an immortal child. Did they truly possess some secret wisdom gathered from ancient civilizations, or was it nothing more than delusion? For those unfamiliar with James Bernard Schaeffer and the Royal Fraternity of Master Metaphysicians, prepare for a story beyond belief. Little is known of James's early years. He was born around 1896 in Fargo, North Dakota. At first, he was an ordinary young man, attending the University of Michigan and earning a medical degree. Yet he also became fascinated with metaphysics and, more controversially, was once a member of the Ku Klux Klan. By the 1930s, James had built a cult of thousands of followers. Time magazine described the Royal Fraternity of Master Metaphysicians as a theological hodgepodge, a mixture of self-help, Christian Science, and faith healing. Their beliefs were unusual for the time. They rejected meat, coffee, tobacco, and alcohol. While these choices might not sound strange today, in the 1930s, when doctors still prescribed cigarettes for lung ailments, such views were considered radical. More unusually, every week, James, who now called himself the Messenger, issued a precise menu for his followers, dictating what they should eat. He insisted that all illness, physical or mental, was caused by negative thoughts, and that only positive thinking could heal. Gradually, he expanded his teachings into the belief that death itself could be defeated by maintaining positive thought. In 1939, James declared that he and his cult would raise an immortal child. It sounds like a vampire tale, but they truly believed their metaphysical knowledge and willpower could nurture a child who could not die. The chosen infant was Jean, the daughter of Catherine Gaughan, a poor mother unable to care for her. She entrusted Jean to James. Jean was taken to a Long Island mansion that James called Peace Haven. There, her diet was strictly regulated, and every member of the cult ensured that she was surrounded only by positive words and cheerful thoughts, shielded entirely from negativity. No one knows the outcome, for the experiment was never completed. After 15 months, Catherine demanded her daughter back. The project collapsed, and not long afterward, James was indicted for fraud and sent to Sing Sing prison. Without its leader, the cult dissolved. Years later, in 1955, James was found dead in his car from carbon monoxide poisoning. As of 2002, Jean was still alive and well, with a family of her own, though she never once spoke publicly about her bizarre childhood in the cult. Whether she ever truly became immortal remains a mystery. In Iran, archaeologists recently uncovered the remains of a prehistoric military fortress at Tepe-Revi in North Khorasan province. The stronghold dates back about 2,700 years, to the time when this land was under the rule of the Median Empire. Yet the Medes remain so mysterious that even today, many people question whether their empire was real or simply legend. The Medes once occupied a region called Media, stretching across mountains from Iran to Mesopotamia. They emerged sometime in the 8th century before the Common Era, though their exact origins remain unknown. Their capital was the city of Ecbatana, today's Hamadan, which itself is a source of intrigue. The ancient city of Ecbatana lies completely buried beneath the modern settlement and has never been excavated. This means everything scholars wish to know about the Median Empire still lies hidden under layers of homes, streets, and neighborhoods. The discovery of this military fortress strengthens the argument that the Medes truly possessed an organized government and powerful army. But what became of them after 625 years before the Common Era remains an unanswered question. The Mughal Empire lasted for only about 3 centuries, yet it was one of the most significant kingdoms in Indian history. By the year 1650, it stood as a leading power of the Islamic world, alongside the Ottoman Empire and Persia's rising Safavid Empire. By 1690, the Mughals controlled nearly all of India, ruling over a population of about 160 million. Their system of governance was modeled on the principles established by the legendary Mongol leader Genghis Khan. This is no surprise, since the empire was founded by the Prince Babur, who was a descendant of Genghis Khan through his mother. In 1526, Babur conquered northern India, defeating Sultan Ibrahim Shah Lodi, and established Mughal dominance across the subcontinent. The Mughals would go on to build the Taj Mahal, a global icon that still attracts millions of visitors. After the death of Emperor Shah Jahan's wife in 1627, the Taj Mahal was commissioned as her memorial tomb, completed after nearly 22 years of labor. But like all empires, the Mughal dynasty eventually declined. In 1672, a massive uprising shook its foundations. The rulers lost power and gradually surrendered territories, such as present-day Afghanistan. By 1707, the British had arrived, signaling the end of this once mighty empire. In the summer of last year, archaeologists uncovered the remains of a Roman-era theater in the ancient city of Masara, in what is now Aydın province, Turkey. Nearly 1,800 years old, the structure once held around 20,000 spectators, though much of it now lies buried underground. According to project leader Mehmet Umut Tuner, the team identified massive stone walls protruding from the earth and began excavations to preserve the site against the elements. They determined that the arena was built around the year 200 after the Common Era. The structure was erected during the Severan dynasty, which lasted from 193 to 235 after the Common Era, spanning 5 emperors. Remarkably well preserved, the site still retains its seating tiers, boundary walls, and gladiatorial arena floor. Smaller than the Colosseum, the arena boasted walls 82 feet high and a central battleground measuring 131 by 98 feet. Masara prospered under Roman administration, benefiting from economic management and thriving trade. Studies reveal a sharp increase in the diversity and volume of coins minted in Masara, reflecting its wealth. The arena itself hosted bloody clashes between gladiators and wild beasts, where citizens wagered on the outcomes. Wealthier attendees enjoyed private viewing rooms, while gladiators waited in holding chambers inside the structure. This is the only known theater of its kind in Anatolia, drawing spectators from nearby cities. Excavations now focus on cleaning, conservation, and geophysical surveys to understand what still lies beneath. Few would expect that less than half an hour from downtown Seattle, on Bainbridge Island, lies a site with an atmosphere altogether different. This is Hall's Hill Lookout, a place at once ancient and mystical, overlooking Puget Sound. Its most striking feature is a labyrinth garden inspired by a 13th century French cathedral. The labyrinth consists of 12 concentric circles, symbolizing the cycles of the moon and the seasons. It incorporates both Native American symbols and ancient astrological references. Walking through it is believed to represent a threefold journey, entering inward, walking outward, and finally achieving contemplative stillness. The grounds also include pathways, flower gardens, stone sculptures, and a massive Buddhist prayer wheel. When spun 9 times, it strikes a bell weighing more than 230 kilograms. Though created in modern times by Portland artist Jeffrey Bale, Hall's Hill Lookout exudes a timeless aura, blending Native American traditions with medieval European style. The result is a unique place where people can connect the past with the spirit, here in the Pacific Northwest. Until recently, archaeologists and anthropologists believed that the first ancestors of Native Americans migrated from Japan. Specifically, they thought the earliest settlers of North America were descended from the Jomon people, who lived in Japan about 15,000 years ago. This was the same era in which migrations were believed to occur across the Bering Land Bridge, though the precise timing has long been debated. A new discovery, however, has overturned this theory. According to scientists, biological evidence no longer matches what archaeology once suggested. Professor G. Richard Scott of the University of Nevada has confirmed that the Jomon of Japan share no genetic ties with Native Americans. Instead, they are more closely related to Southeast Asian populations in places such as Thailand and Cambodia, as well as East Asian groups in China, Korea, and the Pacific Islands. This raises a profound mystery. If Native Americans were not descended from the Jomon, then who were their true ancestors? Scientists now believe they belong to another population once living in East Asia, but the identity and homeland of this group remain entirely unknown. The story of the Alamo has never been fully told. One mystery from the year 1836 still waits to be unraveled. In January of that year, a group of pioneers in southern Texas suddenly came into possession of a massive fortune in gold and silver, worth millions of dollars at the time, an extraordinary sum when most wages were just a few dollars a month. The group was led by Colonel Jim Bowie, traveling on the road to the Alamo. The treasure was intended to fund the Texas Revolution, helping the territory win independence from Mexico. For those unfamiliar, before Texas became a state of the United States, it was part of Mexico. 2 months later, Jim Bowie and 188 men made their final stand at the Alamo against 6,000 Mexican soldiers. Among them was the legendary frontiersman Davy Crockett. Not one of the defenders survived, but their story still echoes through history. That is the familiar tale of the Alamo. Yet, according to professional treasure hunter Frank Buschbacher, there is another piece of the story no one talks about. The treasure Jim Bowie and his comrades carried has never been found. Perhaps it is even harder to locate than the lost tomb of Alexander the Great. For 13 days, the Texans held the Alamo against the Mexican army, until they were inevitably overrun. Frank believes that in the final moments, Jim Bowie ordered the treasure lowered into the bottom of a well. But which well was it? Frank is convinced the treasure lies beneath the road, in front of the Alamo Chapel. He believed it so strongly that he secured official permission to excavate a small section of the street, only to find nothing. 3.5 years of paperwork amounted to nothing. Strangely enough, Frank had been granted the permit because a psychic named Maria Gomez identified the site. Maria, who also worked as a museum curator, had never been to the Alamo. She claimed she had a vision of golden coins, silver relics, and ritual offerings hidden in the depths of an ancient well. She even pinpointed the well's location on a map, the very place where Frank dug. Although no treasure emerged, archaeologists uncovered strange artifacts at a depth of more than 12 meters underground, shattered native pottery, ancient cooking tools, and butchered animal bones. No gold or silver, but clear evidence of indigenous activity. It may be that the Alamo was built atop an ancient Native American burial ground, something few had ever considered. As for the Alamo treasure, Frank still believes it remains buried at the bottom of a secret well, yet no one knows which one. Only recently have archaeologists begun to investigate the largest prehistoric monument south of the Sahara in Africa. It is an enigma spanning 1,800 acres, its ruined stone walls once sheltering as many as 20,000 people. During the Middle Ages, it ranked among the world's most thriving cities. This was Great Zimbabwe, the once glorious medieval capital that collapsed along with the kingdom that ruled it in the 15th century. Even after its abandonment, the ancient Shona people continued to use the ruins for rituals and sacred traditions. Tracing its earliest days, archaeologists are confident that Great Zimbabwe was first settled in the 4th century after the Common Era. The Shona built stone walls, mined nearby iron, raised livestock, and transformed the site into the capital of a powerful Zimbabwean kingdom. Today, there are still about 10 million Shona people worldwide, many tracing their ancestry back to this city. By the 11th century, the Zimbabwean kingdom was unstoppable. For 300 years, nearly half the world's gold supply came from its lands, an astonishing figure. Merchants poured in from Persia, Europe, and even China. Great Zimbabwe was vast, spreading across valleys and hills with monumental stone structures. Its builders laid millions of stones without using a drop of mortar. The oldest quarter, high on the hill, was the king's palace, overlooking the city below. The Great Enclosure was the largest structure, considered the second biggest stone monument in Africa after the pyramids of Giza. It may have been where the king gathered his wives, children, and court. For a brief moment in history, Zimbabwe dominated a vast region. But its prosperity did not last. Great Zimbabwe was abandoned for reasons still debated. Some argue its resources were depleted, leaving it unable to sustain a growing population. Others believe the neighboring Mutapa kingdom conquered it in 1430. While the ruins were never forgotten by the Shona, the kingdom itself slipped from global memory. The first foreigner to see the ruins was an American gold hunter in 1867. When he led German explorer Karl Mausch there, Mausch refused to believe that Africans had built it. Fueled by racial prejudice, Western scholars for nearly a century attributed Great Zimbabwe to Phoenicians or Babylonians, claiming it was a secondary palace of the biblical Queen of Sheba. In England, Colin Steer spent years wondering about a dip in the floor of his living room. When he retired in 2012, he finally decided to investigate. With the help of a friend, he dug a hole 17 feet deep over 3 days and uncovered a medieval well dating back to the 16th century. The well, 33 feet deep, had been built by Sir Francis Drake to channel water from Dartmoor to Plymouth, but was sealed in 1895. Inside, Steer discovered a 16th century farmer's sword. He installed lighting and a trapdoor over the opening. The well has since become the centerpiece of his living room and a frequent topic of conversation in the neighborhood. Years earlier, his wife had discouraged him from exploring beneath the floor, since at the time they were raising 3 small children. He had suspected it might be a sinkhole or even a burial site, neither safe for children. Earlier this year, nearly a decade after he first began digging, Steer uncovered a coin dated 1725 from inside the well. He now plans to continue searching for artifacts, a project to keep him busy throughout retirement. Akhenaten remains one of history's most enigmatic rulers, in part because some believe he may not have been human at all. First, the historical facts. Akhenaten was the 10th pharaoh of Egypt's 18th dynasty. Remembered for his strange appearance, elongated skull, oversized facial features, and a somewhat feminine figure, he is also infamous for attempting to radically transform Egypt's ancient religion. He moved the capital from Thebes to Amarna and established a new cult devoted solely to Aten, the solar disk, as a manifestation of Ra, abandoning all other traditional deities. The changes unsettled society, sparking widespread unrest. Pharaoh even changed his name from Amenhotep IV to Akhenaten. He ruled for 17 years, disrupting Egyptian religion and society until his death. When his son Tutankhamun came to power, the old traditions were swiftly restored and the Aten cult erased. The theory that Akhenaten was an alien stems from his peculiar appearance. In carvings and statues, he resembles modern depictions of extraterrestrials: a thin body, protruding stomach, oversized eyes dominating the face, and an abnormally large head. Legends even tell of a pendant depicting Akhenaten with an unidentified flying object hovering above. Strange artifacts have been found in connection with this pharaoh, fueling speculation that he was linked at the very least to an otherworldly civilization. In Newfoundland, Canada, archaeologists recently discovered what may be the oldest English coin ever found in the country. William Gilbert, lead archaeologist, confirmed that the small silver piece was minted between 1493 and 1499 during the reign of King Henry VII. It was a half-groat, about the size of a modern 5-cent piece, struck in Canterbury, England. The coin was unearthed at the historic site of Cupid's Cove Plantation, one of the earliest English settlements in North America, founded by merchant John Guy in 1610. That the oldest coin was found at the oldest colony is fitting, but what makes it unusual is that the coin predates the settlement by over a century. The next oldest coin found at the site dates to 1560. What happened in the mysterious gap of more than 100 years between the two coins remains unanswered. In early 2018, archaeologists announced the discovery of a ceremonial banquet hall and numerous artifacts, including human remains belonging to the mysterious Moche culture of Peru. The ruins, about 1,500 years old, consist of 5 adobe pyramid-like structures built on raised terraces, along with 2 rooms, one serving as a banquet hall and the other for meetings. Chief archaeologist Walter Alva told National Geographic that Moche kings used the complex to host festivals and special rituals. The banquet hall was decorated with murals stretching 32 feet, depicting sea lions, fish, and other marine life. 2 thrones faced one another, one for the king, the other, placed lower, for the person presenting offerings. Clearly, the complex was intended for gatherings of the Moche elite. It provides the first physical evidence for such events, previously known only through Moche art. At some point, the structures were partly dismantled, covered over, and abandoned for reasons unknown. The collapse of the powerful Moche civilization around the year 700 after the Common Era remains a mystery. El Niño may have triggered massive floods from the nearby Sanya River, with extreme weather perhaps marking the beginning of their downfall. Yet the true cause of their disappearance is still uncertain. Last year, the United States Fish and Wildlife Service purchased 2,600 acres of land on Maryland's eastern shore for conservation. Known as Peter's Neck, the property became part of the Blackwater National Wildlife Refuge, which has already lost more than 5,000 acres to rising sea levels since its founding in 1933. However, this tract is expected to remain above sea level until at least the year 2100. Officials also suspected the land might once have been the home of Harriet Tubman's father, Ben Ross, and that has now been confirmed. In late April, archaeologists announced the discovery of the site, located near the Harriet Tubman Underground Railroad Visitor Center. The 10-acre parcel had once been granted to Ben Ross by slaveholder Anthony Thompson. According to Thompson's will, Ross received both freedom and land in the 1840s, 5 years after Thompson's death. It was here that young Harriet Tubman, then still called Araminta Ross, learned crucial navigation skills that she would later use to escape slavery and guide others to freedom along the Underground Railroad. A team of archaeologists began excavations in November. After a difficult start, they uncovered an 1808 half-dollar coin, the year Ben Ross married his wife. Though the house's foundations were gone, the team recovered numerous 19th-century artifacts, including nails, bricks, glass, dish fragments, pottery, and buttons, pinpointing the exact location of Ross's former home. The discovery came just in time. While the land is not expected to flood for many decades, climate change could eventually turn it into marshland. The Grand Duchy of Lithuania was once one of the most formidable powers in Eastern Europe, from the 14th to the 16th centuries. Before that, Lithuania was merely a loose federation of tribes. When the German, Teutonic, and Livonian knights emerged as a threat, the Lithuanian tribes united into a duchy. Consolidation was essential to withstand the knights and their allies, who had already conquered much of Russian territory and pushed as far as the Baltic and Black Seas. Lithuania held its ground against the Germans until the late 16th century. At that point, it sought help from Poland. The Polish king agreed to defend Lithuania, but only if the duchy merged with Poland. The two nations formed a union, with Lithuania adopting Polish culture and language, effectively becoming part of Poland. This union lasted from 1569 until the late 18th century, when the Russian Empire annexed Lithuania. The nation only regained independence in the 1990s. After the fall of the Soviet Union, in 2016, a remarkably preserved wooden ship was unearthed in the ancient Egyptian necropolis of Abu Sir. Found in the tomb of a high-ranking official, the vessel dated back 4,500 years, with its planks and ropes still intact, one of the few Egyptian boats to survive in such excellent condition. Built of valuable cedar wood and measuring 60 feet long, it was unusually large and lavish for a non-royal burial. But the great question remains, why was it buried in the desert? In truth, Abu Sir lies close to the Nile River, the lifeline of Egypt's transport and commerce. Ships became increasingly important during the Fourth Dynasty, both for international trade and as symbols of state power. According to Douglas Inglis of Texas A&M University, the burial of boats was a common practice in Egypt's Old Kingdom. Whether the Abu Sir vessel ever touched water is unknown. Experts believe it was interred to serve the deceased in the afterlife or to carry their soul on the journey to the world beyond. In Myanmar's Mandalay region lies Bagan, once the magnificent capital of a kingdom that unified the territories forming today's Myanmar. Founded in the 2nd century after the Common Era, Bagan reached its peak between the 11th and 13th centuries. At that time, more than 10,000 Buddhist temples, pagodas, and monasteries covered the plains surrounding the city. Bagan was not only the political, economic, and cultural heart of the empire, but also a major center of both secular and religious learning. Here, people studied languages, philosophy, grammar, astrology, and many other fields. Religion dominated local life. But faith in Bagan was unusually fluid, blending elements from many systems: Buddhism, Hinduism, and animism. In the year 1287, Mongol invasions brought about Bagan's collapse. Although the physical destruction was limited, the attacks drastically reduced its population from between 50,000 and 200,000 to little more than a small town. After the kingdom's fall, power shifted to the Mian-Tsang rulers. While some temples continued to attract pilgrims, most were left to decay with time. Bagan lies in an active seismic zone. A devastating earthquake in 1975 destroyed many monuments. In the 1990s, Myanmar's government attempted restorations, but experts criticized them for compromising the original architecture. In 2016, another earthquake struck, damaging around 400 structures. Today, about 2,200 monuments remain standing. Bagan has since become a major tourist destination and one of only 2 UNESCO World Heritage Sites in Myanmar. If someone were to tell Stephen King that his pet cemetery was real, he would be astonished because archaeologists have found proof. Mummified animals have been unearthed in tombs near the Giza Pyramid complex. While legends long spoke of hidden chambers inside the pyramids containing strange beings or even extraterrestrials, recent excavations revealed something else entirely: a massive cemetery of animal mummies, particularly at Saqqara. These discoveries shed new light on ancient Egyptian faith and customs, especially their reverence for animals. Cat lovers may be amazed to learn that Egypt's Ministry of Antiquities recorded vast numbers of mummified cats buried at the foot of the Temple of Bastet. Archaeologists also uncovered the mummies of 2 lion cubs and 3 more that may have been fully grown lions. While cat burials were common, lion mummies are extraordinarily rare. The effort required to mummify a lion shows just how much the Egyptians revered them. The Temple of Bastet at Saqqara was dedicated to cats, linked to the goddess Bastet, depicted in ancient art as a woman with the head of a cat or lioness, the daughter of the sun god Ra. Historians note that worship of Bastet emerged around the same time Egyptians domesticated cats, roughly 1,500 years before the Common Era. At Saqqara, archaeologists also found 2 mummified Egyptian mongooses wrapped in linen, placed beside statues of the goddess Sekhmet. Like Bastet, Sekhmet appears with a lioness head, but she was the goddess of war. In Greek terms, she was like Ares, though with feline grace. The Egyptians loved cats so deeply that they created many feline-inspired deities. The most iconic of all is the Sphinx, a mythical lion-bodied, human-headed guardian. The Great Sphinx beside the pyramids at Giza remains the most enduring monument to Egypt's devotion to cats. When archaeologists excavated Tel al-Ubaid in Iraq at the start of the 20th century, they unearthed artifacts no one could explain: statues of reptilian beings with strange features, clothed in garments that looked futuristic. Some believe they represent alien gods who descended to Earth and gifted early humans with the knowledge to create civilization. The Sumerians called them the Anunnaki. Modern scholars simply call them the Ubaidi lizardmen. Evidence of reptilian beings exists across the world. Whether alien or not, ancient humans seemed fascinated by their image. The lizard statues from Iraq predate the Sumerians, belonging to the Ubaid culture, which began around 5,500 years before the Common Era. Almost nothing is known of their origins, except that they developed agriculture, architecture, and irrigation. Mysteriously, they seem to emerge from the ground, founding villages and leaving behind these reptilian statues. Their architectural skills were advanced, as if humanity leapt overnight from caves into structured towns, roads, and food processing facilities at the exact time the lizard figures appeared. The statues are bizarre. Some show lizard-headed figures wearing helmets resembling space gear. Others are draped in robes with raised shoulders like royal attire. Some even depict women holding lizard babies. They look like ordinary men and women except for their reptilian heads. Many also feature elongated skulls, much like the cranial deformations seen in ancient Paracas of Peru and among Egyptians who reshaped skulls into conical forms. The Maya also practiced skull elongation, perhaps imitating the lizard people. Across cultures, elongated skulls symbolized power and royal status. The practice may have originated from these reptilian archetypes, figures believed to have brought civilization itself. Some Native American tribes also reshaped skulls, despite having no contact with Sumerians. Similar mysteries appear in Sierra Leone, where the enigmatic Nomoli figures statues with reptilian features were discovered, carved by an unknown civilization centuries ago, perhaps during the medieval era. So, what was the truth behind these ancient reptilian beings? Few know that giants were once said to live on Catalina Island off California's coast. Legends describe them as tall, fair-skinned, and blue-eyed. Catalina lies about 22 miles from Los Angeles. Around 7,000 years before the Common Era, the Gabrielino people lived there. In 1542, the Spanish arrived, followed by Mexican and later American rule. In 1896, the Glidden family settled on the island. Their young son, Ralph, discovered a buried skull in the sand. From then on, he obsessively excavated Catalina, and between 1919 and 1928, he uncovered 800 graves and twice as many artifacts. Ralph sold bones and relics to museums and private collectors. Buyers were eager, because some skeletons were gigantic, over 9 feet tall. But the bones crumbled into dust at the slightest touch, like vampires disintegrating in sunlight. Other researchers also reported giant skeletons on the island, only to see them turn to powder. Ralph claimed evidence of a race of fair-skinned giants living there 3,000 years ago. He even found a giant girl's skeleton surrounded by 64 children's remains, as if sacrificed in her honor. Nearby Santa Rosa Island also yielded giant bones in 1959. Some skulls had double rows of teeth and 6 fingers and toes. These were not merely tall humans, they seemed like another species altogether. In 1913, German naturalist A.W. Furstenan unearthed a skeleton over 8 feet tall on Catalina. He recorded legends of a giant race inhabiting California's coastal islands long before Europeans arrived. So many giant bones were reported, yet none remain today. Were they deliberately destroyed, or did they mysteriously turn to dust? The fate of California's giants remains unknown. In 2005, an undiscovered tomb was found in Egypt's Valley of the Kings, the first since Tutankhamun's was unearthed in 1922. Nearly 20 years later, it remains one of Egypt's great mysteries. The valley served as the burial ground of New Kingdom pharaohs between 1539 and 1075 before the Common Era, including Tutankhamun, Seti I, and Ramses II. Queens, high priests, and courtiers also rested there. Inside these tombs, pharaohs prepared for divine transformation with the help of embalmers. Mummification was essential for resurrection in the afterlife. Without it, their souls could not live again. Tombs were filled with treasures, gold, jewelry, amulets, even magical books. Food and wine were provided for eternal feasts. Sometimes servants and pets, such as baboons and hunting dogs, were buried too. By 1922, more than 62 tombs had been found. Then in 2005, archaeologist Otto Schaden discovered another, just 50 feet from Tutankhamun's Nair. But inside were only empty coffins and faded flowers robbed long ago, centuries before the 21st century. To this day, no one knows who was buried there, or if anyone was at all. Like most ancient tombs, it had been looted millennia earlier. As far back as 60 years before the Common Era, Greek historian Diodorus Siculus lamented, "We found nothing but traces of plunder and destruction." Australian Aboriginal people have used boomerangs for at least 20,000 years. Evidence lies in cave paintings depicting them, dated that far back. The oldest surviving wooden boomerangs are only about 10,000 years old, since wood rarely lasts longer. Recently, 2 staffers from South Australia's Parks and Wildlife Service unearthed 4 boomerangs from the dry bed of a creek during drought. They were 400 years old, yet astonishingly well preserved. But none were designed to return when thrown. Unlike the popular image of a boomerang curving back, these flew straight. Why would anyone craft non-returning boomerangs? The truth is, boomerangs were multi-purpose. They served as hunting weapons, tools, ritual objects, even digging implements. Some may have been clubs or hammers. To this day, no one knows exactly why these 4 were built not to return. Passetto di Borgo may sound like an Italian dish, but it is one of the most famous escape routes in history. Hidden within Vatican walls, it saved a pope's life during Rome's darkest hour. On May 6, 1527, an army of 35,000 mercenaries stormed Rome. Pope Clement VII was trapped in St. Peter's Basilica, defended only by a small militia and his Swiss guard. As battle raged, the guards made a last stand on the church steps while the Pope slipped away through the secret passage, the Passetto. The corridor stretched more than 800 meters to Castel Sant'Angelo fortress. Thanks to it, the Pope lived, but Rome was devastated. Of 189 Swiss guards, only 42 survived. The city's population fell from 55,000 to barely 10,000 within months. Clement himself was imprisoned in the fortress until ransomed, disguised as a peddler to escape. The Passetto was first built in the 9th century, then expanded by Pope Alexander VI in 1492. He too once fled through it. After centuries of neglect, it was restored in 2000 for the Jubilee year. Today, visitors may walk its length each summer, though Swiss guards still hold the keys should a pope ever need to flee again. Every May 6th, the Vatican honors the guards who gave their lives that day in 1527. In northern Bulgaria, the Transfiguration Monastery hides a strange secret, a green iron door at the hillside's base, leading into a mysterious tunnel. The monastery is eerie enough, its cracked walls, old gravestones, and crypts. In winter, when leaves fall, the green door becomes visible. Beyond it lies a tunnel, stretching 200 feet before ending in a collapse. What lies beyond the rubble remains unknown. The walls are sturdy, with no signs of vandalism, only traces of campfires and torn engineering manuals burned as kindling. Yet nothing explains who built it or why. Founded in 1825, the monastery endured disasters, including a boulder crash in 1991. Today, its walls blaze with frescoes of demons, tormenting sinners. Did the tunnel once lead the damned below, or serve some entirely different purpose? In Colombia, Piedra de Jujuá is known as the most mysterious mountain in the Americas. Each week, thousands flock there to watch UFOs drawn to its summit. Near Bogotá, the mountain was sacred to the Muisca people, who offered gifts and lives in sacrifice. Blood soaked its slopes, from rituals to warriors who died fighting Spanish invaders. Locals believe such tragic energy still fuels the mountain's power. Engineer William Chavez Ariza has studied its phenomena for more than 30 years. He claims to have seen glowing discs circling its peak, as if pulled by invisible force. To locals, Piedra de Jujuá is both holy ground and a gateway to cosmic mysteries. Karakoto, the Black City, is a ruined fortress in western Inner Mongolia, China. Founded in 1032, it once thrived as a hub of religion, art, and Silk Road trade. It was controlled by a Tibeto-Burman tribal confederation, flourishing for nearly 2 centuries. But in the 13th century, Genghis Khan demanded troops for his army. When Karakoto refused, he besieged it with 180,000 soldiers. In 1226, he conquered the city. Though its people were slaughtered, the city continued under Mongol rule until the 14th century. Yet its location was dire. In every direction, 40 days' journey lay only desert. It was a city in the void, with no natural water supply. By the 14th century, Ming forces attacked, cutting off water caravans. The Black City collapsed, swallowed by sand, and vanished until rediscovered in the 20th century. If you found these mysterious stories fascinating, let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss any of our upcoming discoveries. We'll see you in the next video.